For the introduction, on 9 May 2018, Pakatan Harapan made history by winning Malaysia's 14 January election with Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohammed returning as Prime Minister. Barisan Nasional's defeat stemmed from several key issues: the failure to sense public anger towards Najib, dissatisfaction over GST and also rising living costs, especially among the M40 group. The Islamic political tsunami also played a role, with PAS dominating in Kelantan and Terengganu and becoming kingmakers in Perak and Kedah. Silent voters, making up 10 to 15% of the electorate, were swayed by online campaigns. BN's internal struggles, especially sidelining loyal leaders, further weakened their position. Now, the rakyat expects real reform from Pakatan Harapan and end to money politics, cronyism and mismanagement, while preserving Islamic values and royal institutions. This victory is not just political, but a test of true leadership.
NATS 2.0 Anti-Corruption Plan. To effectively combat corruption, Malaysia must begin with strong and earnest leadership as it set the tone for the entire system. When leaders are clean, courageous and also transparent, they inspire public trust and also establish a solid foundation for reform. However, leadership alone is not enough. Real change requires a united effort across all levels of society. This includes collaboration between government agency and also non-government agency, like Transparency International Malaysia, TIM, and active participation from the public. When different sectors work together with trust, commitment, and shared goals, anti-corruption initiatives become far more effective and sustainable. This shows that public awareness and support is very important and needed. The fight against corruption must become a shared moral responsibility where every citizen understands its danger and refuses to tolerate it. Education, ethical role model in public service, and consistent messaging are essential to build this awareness. Moreover, engaging critics and skeptical through respectful dialogue is crucial. Using facts, logic, and cultural-rooted approach such as the Islamic principle from Surah Al-Nahl, verse 125, where wisdom al-hikmah, good advice, mauwizah, hasanah, and respectful debate, mujadalah, allow us to reach different audience effectively. Lastly, legal reforms and strong enforcement must keep pace with evolving challenges. Laws should be firm yet adaptable, and reform must focus not just on punishment but also on changing society behavior over time. Together, this effort will pave the way towards a clean, fair and corruption-free of Malaysia.
Okay, so let's move to the Malaysian New Social Union, a concept that gained relevance after the 14 January election. Since 1971, Malaysia focused on social cohesion, but after GE14, this evolved into social unity, driven largely by the Malaysian writers' movement. What began as the idea of Malaysian Malaysia has since broadened into a more inclusive concept, pluralism or unity in diversity. This shift aligned with the Islamic principle of Rahmatan lil Alamin, a mercy to all, promoting harmony across ethnic and cultural lines. However, our current political climate must also address more complex challenges that go beyond economics and include religious and socio-cultural tensions. The nation's stability now hinges on the maturity of its people in facing these multi-dimensional issues. Let's look at three pressing concerns. First, education issues. Generation Y, the driving force behind our social future, face rising education costs. Education, once free until the 1990s, is now a financial burden, especially in universities. The introduction of the National Higher Education Fund expanded access, but high fees remain and many graduates struggle to find jobs that match their qualifications. Second, job opportunities. Since the 1990s, economic responsibility has shifted to the private sector, which often prioritize profit and cheaper labor. Without strong government regulation, Foreign labour dominates many sectors, making it harder for local graduates to secure meaningful employment. Third, distrust in the system. We see this when foreign traders easily operate in city markets like Kuala Lumpur, while local youth face bureaucracy and harassment just for trying to start a business. The lack of fairness access undermines the very idea of unity we're striving for. In conclusion, social unity must be more than a concept. To truly bring Malaysians together, it requires fair, inclusive action, especially in education, employment, and economic opportunity.
Today, I will explain two important issues that affected Malaysia's national policies, namely the ICET ratification and the UEC recognition. The first one is halting ICET ratification. The International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, or ICET, was introduced in 1963 to eliminate all forms of racial discrimination against minority groups, indigenous people, migrants, and refugees. If Malaysia ratified ICET, it would be required to give foreigners the same rights and treatments as Malaysian citizens, including in areas such as healthcare, education, and social services. Countries that agree to ratify ICET but later fail to comply can face legal actions by the United Nations, such as sanctions as seen as the case of Myanmar. Meanwhile, countries that do not ratify, like China, are only given recommendations without facing legal penalties. In Malaysia, the ratification of ICET became a sensitive issue because it was seen as a threat to the social contract, particularly the special rights of the Malays and the position of Islam as the religion of the Federation. After careful consideration and advice from the Attorney General as well as the Conference of Rulers, the Malaysian government decided to halt the ratification process in order to preserve national harmony and the spirit of the federal constitution. The second one is the rejection of the UEC. The Unified Examination Certificate, or UEC, originates from the Chinese education movement in Malaysia, which adopted the education system of Taiwan based on the ideals of Dr. Sun Yat-sen, promoting nationalism and socialism. In 1995, the United Chinese School Committees Association and the United Chinese School Teachers Association demanded that the government recognize the UEC for admission into Malaysia's public university and allow the use of Chinese language as the main medium of instruction. However, the Education Act 1961 clearly states that Bahasa Malaysia must be the main medium of instruction in all schools, and this requirement was reinforced by Section 17, Subsection 1 and Section 26A, which allow action against non-compliant schools. Although the government had previously allowed the teaching of science and mathematics in English under the PPSMI program, the overall policy is still maintain Bahasa Malaysia as the primary language for other subjects. One major reason for the rejection of the UEC was the difference in syllabus, as the UEC follows the Taiwanese and American educational standards, while the Malaysian system is based on the British standards, and the national identity. Even though the government rejected the demand of UEC recognition, it provided alternatives such as establishing University Tunku Abdul Rahman and easing pathways for UEC students to continue their education abroad, especially in Taiwan and China. In recent years, certain states like Sarawak and Malacca have independently recognized the UEC for entrance into their public universities, although it remains unrecognized at the federal level. In conclusion, both ICET and UEC raised major constitutional and identity concerns, leading Malaysia to act cautiously in protecting national interests.
Okay, next topic is 14th General Election Manifesto and Promises. So, Malaysia government attempt to fulfill the promises made during the 14th General Election, or GE14, based on the perspective of political expert Meredith West from the University at Albany. Okay, first thing first is expectation versus reality. After GE14, Malaysians were full of hope for real change. However, West argues that the reform introduced by the new government were only administrative in nature, not deep structural change as expected, unlike the transformation seen in the post, like Suharto in Indonesia. Okay. Next, scope of reform. According to Weiss, reform efforts focus more on administrative adjustment than addressing deeper socio-political and economic issues. She suggested that a more democratic system on check and balance is crucial to prevent the mistake of past government from repeating. And next, economic direction and mega project. In terms of the economy, Weiss note that both PH and BN share a neoliberal mindset, like prioritizing mega project and market force. This has led to a wider gap between the rich and the poor, reduced government intervention, and increased pressure on ordinary citizens. Last recommendation. In conclusion, to fulfill the GE40 manifesto requires more than surface level change. To truly achieve the vision of the new Malaysia, the government must commit to deep, inclusive reform that ensure justice, transparency, and benefit for all Malaysians, not just the elite.
Opposition alliances in Malaysia began in 1969 with PAS-DAP cooperation, which ended after the May 13 incident. The 1988 UMNO split led to Semangat 46 and the formation of Angkatan Perpaduan Ummah (APU), including PAS, HAMIN, and Berjasa. In 1998, Barisan Alternatif was formed, PKR, PAS, DAP, PRM, but dissolved after a weak 1999 election. Momentum returned in 2008 with Pakatan Rakyat, which denied BN a 2/3 majority. However, internal DAP PAS tension led to its collapse in 2015. Pakatan Harapan, or PH, emerged, comprising of PKR, DAP, Amanah, PPBM, and Warisan. In 2018, PH won 134 seats and formed the government under Tun Dr. Mahathir. Yet, internal issues persisted. PKR's leadership instability and DAP's public criticism. The entry of ex-UMNO MPs into PPBM created tensions, weakening PKR's influence. Although Mahathir held the coalition together, questions remain about its future leadership and internal unity, especially concerning Anwar Ibrahim's role. 6.1 Dilemma Old Malay versus New Malay. There is a growing divide within the Malay Muslim community between the Old Malays and New Malays. Old Malays emphasize Malay Islamic supremacy, loyalty to the monarchy, and preserving tradition. They see Islam as central to national identity. New Malays, mostly younger and educated, support a more inclusive, merit-based system called Malaysian supremacy. They value accountability, integrity, and equal opportunity over race or religion. Influenced by global Islamic thought, New Malays question outdated practices and reject the politicization of Islam. They support non-Malays in top government role and want transparent, progressive governance. Economically, they prefer competition based on merit, not special privilege. They believe real empowerment comes from integrity and capability, not entitlement.
Okay, to conclude, we must remember that history shaped the soul of a nation. As Malaysian progresses, we cannot allow modernization to disconnect us from our roots. Our national identity is built on four main pillars: the supremacy of the Malays, the monarchy, Islam as the religion of the federation, and unity among all ethnic groups. These values have remained strong through political transition and must continue to be preserved. Islam must not be seen as a mere ritual. It is a living foundation that guides how we govern and live. Malay customs passed down through generations should be not discarded in the name of the progress. Lastly, we must be cautious of liberal and individualistic ideologies that try to separate religion from daily life. These ideas threaten not just our identity, but also weaken the foundation of the Islam agenda in Malaysia. So that's all from our group. Thank you.